My family demanded I pay the $15,000 bill for the funeral they shut me out of. My own family. They blocked me from my own father's funeral, stole my chance to say a final goodbye, and then had the nerve to hand me the bill, just expecting me to pay it. I guess they thought that because I was the successful one, the son who always cleaned up their messes, I would just roll over and take this final, massive insult. But they miscalculated. They didn't realize they had finally pushed me too far. This time, I wasn't fixing their problems. This time, I was going to teach them a lesson about consequences they would never, ever forget. For as long as I can remember, I was the responsible one. My dad had me with his first wife, who passed away when I was little. A few years later, he married my stepmother, Helen, and they had my two half-brothers, Mark and David. From the moment they came along, that's just how things were. My dad was a simple, hard-working man. He loved all of us, but he was passive. Helen ran the show, and in her eyes, her sons could do no wrong. Mark and David basically coasted through life on a wave of my dad's generosity and Helen's endless excuses. They'd borrow money and never pay it back, drift between jobs, and always had some new drama that needed a bailout. Me? I was expected to be different. I was the one who had to get straight A's, work a job through high school, and put myself through college to build a career from nothing. I didn't really mind. I loved my dad, and I knew he was proud of me. I'd drive over every other weekend, help him with projects around the house, and take him out to lunch. Our bond was quiet, but it was strong. Helen and my brothers, on the other hand, only seemed to pay attention to him when they needed something. The phone calls always started the same way: "Your father and I were just talking." Which was code for, "We need money, and you're our first call." I'd send it, knowing it was more for my dad's peace of mind than anything else. I just wanted to lessen his stress. When Dad's health started to fail, I was the one taking him to his appointments. I researched his condition online, talked to specialists, and made sure he had what he needed. Helen, Mark, and David were suddenly nowhere to be found. They were always too busy, or claimed it was just too emotional for them. The truth? They couldn't handle it because it was a responsibility, not a handout. The day my dad passed, I was the one sitting by his hospital bed, holding his hand. Not them. I was the one who had to call Helen and give her the news. Through her sobs, I honestly thought we would finally come together as a family. I was so wrong. The change was immediate and brutal, like a switch had been flipped. One moment I was a grieving son, the next I was an obstacle. I called Helen the following day to talk about funeral arrangements, and she was cold. "We're handling it, Alex. Don't you worry. We'll let you know the details." I tried to push back. "Helen, I want to be involved. He was my father. I want to help pick things out, the readings, everything." Her voice turned sharp. "Alex, this is a very difficult time. We have it under control. The boys and I have a vision for how to honor him." A vision. These were the same sons who hadn't visited him in a month. This was the wife who couldn't be bothered to sit with him in his final hours. But I backed off, telling myself it was just her grief talking. I decided to give her space. That was my mistake. Days went by. My calls went straight to voicemail. My texts were left unread. A knot of panic started to form in my stomach. Finally, I called my Aunt Carol, my dad's sister. What she told me made my blood run cold. "Oh, Alex, honey. The funeral is on Saturday. Didn't Helen tell you? They booked the most expensive package at the funeral home. A mahogany casket, a massive flower display, even a fully catered reception." I was just stunned. They had planned the entire thing without one word to me. No ask for a favorite memory, a photo, nothing. They had deliberately cut me out of honoring my own father. I showed up on Saturday feeling like a ghost at my own dad's funeral. Helen, Mark, and David were at the front, greeting people like they were hosts at a party. They gave me these tight, fake hugs and muttered, "Thanks for coming." The service was a show. It was all about their grief, their memories. My half-brothers, who barely knew what my dad's life was like, gave these long eulogies about what a great ATM he was, conveniently leaving out the part where they were never there. I just sat there in the pew, feeling completely invisible, my heart like a stone in my chest. Exactly 1 week later, the phone rang. It was Helen. Her voice was back to that sickly sweet tone she always used when she wanted something. "Alex, dear. I hope you're doing okay," she began. "I'm managing," I said, my voice flat. Good. Now, there's a small matter to discuss. The funeral was just lovely, wasn't it? Exactly what your father would have wanted. So dignified. I didn't say a word. I just waited for it. Well, she cleared her throat. The bill came. It's for $15,000. And since you're in a much better financial spot than we are, Mark, David, and I all agree that you should handle it. It's the least you could do to honor your father. There it was. The punchline to the cruelest joke imaginable. First, they shut me out, now they were trying to extort me. I felt this surge of white-hot anger that was so intense it was actually clarifying. They didn't see me as a son. They saw me as a wallet. They had their big, fancy party, and now they wanted me to foot the bill. Let me get this straight, I said, my voice dangerously calm. You shut me out completely. You plan a funeral I had no part in. You don't even bother to tell me when or where it is. And now you're sending me the bill? Don't be so dramatic, Alex, she snapped, the sweet act gone. You make good money. It's your duty as his son. My duty was being there for him when he was alive, which is more than I can say for you or your sons, I shot back. You didn't want my help, you didn't want my input, and you sure as hell aren't getting my money. I hung up the phone, my hand trembling. In that moment of ultimate disrespect, I found my spine. They had crossed a line. My grief was now mixed with a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't just going to refuse. I was going to make them regret they ever tried this. The first thing I did was call a lawyer who specialized in estate law. After I explained everything, he asked me one simple question: who signed the contract with the funeral home? Helen, of course. The lawyer confirmed it. The person who signs the contract is legally on the hook for the bill. I had zero legal obligation to pay for something I never agreed to. He also told me that funeral costs are supposed to be paid from the deceased's estate, not by a single family member. He advised me to formally request a copy of the will, which was my legal right as my dad's son. Now that I knew my rights, it was time to act. I sent a short, formal email to Helen, Mark, and David. I stated clearly that I would not be paying 1 cent of the funeral bill, since I never authorized it. I noted that the person who signed the contract is the one responsible for the payment. Then, I added that as my father's child, I was formally requesting a copy of his will to see how his estate was being handled to cover legitimate costs. The reaction was an explosion. My phone blew up with furious texts. Mark called me a disgrace. David threatened to tell everyone how I'd abandoned them. Helen sent a novel about how I was disrespecting my father's memory and that she'd see me in court. I didn't reply. Instead, I took a page right out of their playbook. I forwarded my polite email, their unhinged responses, and the $15,000 invoice to our entire extended family, aunts, uncles, everyone. I added a calm note: I wanted to make you all aware of a difficult situation. As you know, I wasn't involved in planning my father's service. I've now been asked to pay this bill. I have declined, and this was the response. I'm just heartbroken over all of this. The fallout was immediate. Family members who had sent Helen condolences were now calling her and asking hard questions. My Aunt Carol was furious on my behalf. My uncles, who had loaned money to my brothers before, were disgusted. The social consequences were swift and brutal. Helen and her sons were exposed for the greedy, manipulative people they were. But I wasn't done. It turned out Dad did have a will, and Helen, as the executor, had been hiding it from me. My lawyer helped me file a petition to force her to produce it. When she finally did, we found 2 things. First, my dad's estate had more than enough money to cover a reasonable funeral. Second, my dad had left me his classic car, the one thing we'd always worked on together in the garage. Helen had been planning to sell it to pay off her and her son's credit cards. The end didn't come with a shouting match. It came as an email from her lawyer. They were dropping the demand for the $15,000. The funeral home was now legally pursuing her for payment, and with the whole family watching, she had to pay it from the estate, which took a huge bite out of the inheritance she and her sons were expecting. She was also forced to sign the car's title over to me. In the end, they got stuck with the bill for the lavish party they threw for themselves. Their greed cost them dearly, not just in money, but in family. Most of our relatives have cut them off, and they're left to deal with the mess they made. I never got the goodbye I wanted with my dad, at least not the one they staged. But I did get justice. A few weeks later, I drove his car up to his favorite spot in the mountains, where we used to go fishing. I just sat there for hours, remembering the good times, the quiet moments, the man he really was. That was my real funeral for him. I learned a hard lesson about what grief can reveal about people. Sometimes, the only way to honor someone's memory is to stand up for yourself and demand the respect they always showed you. They wanted me to pay for their disrespect. Instead, they paid the price for it themselves.